So thanks everybody for coming back. We're going to finish today's event with a panel debate. Feel free to wade in via questions in the chat function. But first to introduce our panel. Our president, Helen Tapper from Tapper Interiors, Operations Director there, and our president of FIS. We've got FIS directors, Jim Narnia, Director of Stortford Interior UK Limited, Jonathan Cherry, Managing Director of Ecophon, and Lydia Sharples, Group Marketing and Communications Director at Encom. We've also got special guest Steve Watson, who's the National Supply Chain Director from Wilmot Dixon. Our previous speakers, Andrew Parkin of Cundall and Anne Bentley from Ryder Levitt Bucknell. And we also have representing our sponsor today, Sean Bonner, who's Sales Director at eTag Fixings. So to set the scene for the debate, the CLC Roadmap to Recovery has laid out proposals to secure the future of construction businesses nationwide, while setting the industry on a sustainable path towards recovery based on 3 key steps. Transformation, which is about sustained growth through innovation. Value, which is adoption of procurement models that deliver better value and whole life performance. And partnership, which is about stronger partnerships between the industry and its clients, and that focus on competence. This session is about taking a step back. It's not looking at where we're going, but how we, that's what the roadmap's done. We're looking at how we get there. So really the seizing the day as individuals and as an FIS community to see how we can evolve as businesses and how collectively we can transform the sector. So my first question goes to the contractors on the panel. And I'm going to ask a group of questions together. So are we really on the cusp of change? Is it evolution, revolution, or just an inexorable return to the status quo? Then how has your business changed in 2020? And what's this taught you, and where are the key lessons you're going to take forward? And fundamentally, what are you going to do differently in 2021? So I'm going to come first to Helen, and then to Jim, and then across to Steve from Wilmot Dixon. So Helen, over to you.
Well, I'd love a revolution, but I think I'm going to go. I think it's more likely to be evolution. I think that we've all changed our working practices and procedures hugely since March. I think that the laws of natural selection dictate that some of those procedures, some of the changes will be more efficient, and they'll be the ones that stick, and they'll be the ones we take forward. I think also we've had to think differently. You know, the impact on human nature in this period has been profound. And I think the minute you start to think differently, that affects change. So there will be change, but I don't think it will be a revolution. I think it will be evolution.
Thank you. So should we come across to Jim, please?
Am I on mute? Can you hear me?
No, we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Well, this last year has been difficult for everybody, and I think Helen's right. It's forced change upon most people. I think working practices have changed. All companies need to prepare to change and adapt, as some of the previous speakers mentioned earlier on. I would recommend everybody to review their business plans, look at how you can work differently and adapt to the way our clients are mostly main contractors. So we're working with them because they've adapted and changed their working practices, and we're having to do the same. We're also looking at innovations in terms of how we can do things better. We're looking at off-site manufacturing opportunities, how we can reduce time on site, reduce risk. So and we've completely revisited our business plan, reassessed our company, looked at contract risk, looked at compliance. Compliance is going to be ever more important when it comes to fire-rated petitions and ceilings because of the Hackett report, and our risk, particularly on the dry lining side, is enormous now in terms of ensuring that the build is compliant with the manufacturer's recommendations. If it's not, then the consequences are quite severe, and 1 or 2 companies have already suffered from that. So I think companies have to be prepared to change and adapt and look at new practices. Certainly in London, many of the big developers have shown confidence in the London market. But what they have said is that the way they're going to build their offices is going to be different now. It's going to be more open spaces, easier access, more space to work in. People can choose to work from home and or work from an office, and that they want to make it as easy as for them to transfer from one to the other. So again, that will change how people are looking at projects. I think there's been an enormous amount of refurbishment going on in London to change offices to adapt to the new working practices. So I think that will bring lots of opportunities for us in the cities, because they will have to change their offices to adapt to new working practices, which brings opportunity.
Yeah. Jim, can I be really cheeky and sneak in an extra question on you there? Because you've been helping me out with some work on productivity. I mean, we've sort of seen it as a bit of a negative within the sector in terms of productivity has been dented. Do you see some opportunities going forward from what you've learned?
In what context, sorry?
So your productivity on site as a business, Jim, do you see that, you know, things you've learned through COVID around programming, better planning, has that manifested in any improvement within the sector?
I think for most contractors, productivity fell during the COVID period because we had to learn to adapt to the new rules and regulations. And I think most businesses went through a downturn in productivity. Newer contracts now are putting the risk on us as a business to manage the program. And they're saying to us that, well, you know about COVID now, it's a known risk. So the force majeure clause won't be affected. So you have to look at your program and look at your productivity levels that you're going to need to maintain that program, despite and knowing what the rules are going to come up. So, but I wouldn't say our productivity has improved. I think we're just smarter about how we apply ourselves to projects.
Thanks, Jim. So can I ask the same questions to Steve, please?
Hi everyone. When you say the question, you talk about those series of questions about evolution. Yeah.
Evolution, revolution, how what might Dixon change, and also sort of in terms of what you see in our supply chain as well, Steve, because you have a sort of a slightly different perspective to others.
Okay, so firstly, I probably agree with Helen, to be honest with you. I think it is going to be evolution. I do see, and pretty much like I think what normally happens in our industry is there is a lot of inconsistency across the board. So therefore, we are at various different stages, probably all of us. And I think getting this uniformed approach where we all come together is probably the issue we have in a lot of things in our industry. So I certainly think we're evolving. I think from a supply chain partner perspective, we're looking for those companies that actually have the desire to want to change. I suppose our challenge is finding those partners out there that, you know, that they want to do these things. You know, they want to get better, they want to improve, they want to challenge the main contractor, because, you know, as I said before, I think main contractors sometimes think they know all the answers and we don't. And we want partners that not only have got that desire to want to change and improve, but are actually also happy to kick back on some of the things that main contractors want them to do. 2020 has taught us a lot, like everyone else. Firstly, I think it's probably highlighted what a bunch of idiots we've been at Wilmot Dixon in how we manage our time. I now get done in one day what I used to probably get done in a week, because all I do is spend my time traveling up and down the country. And I think the pennies dropped now that we were mad that we even did that. Shame it took a pandemic to work out the fact that we were spending about £10 million a year on travel that we didn't need to do. So that's one thing that we've learned. We've also learned that we can achieve amazing things with constraints. When you put a constraint in place, it's amazing what you can actually achieve. And we've also learned what a great supply chain we actually have, and that our relationships are so much stronger than we realized we did. We barely had any issues during lockdown, and that was because of the strength of the relationships we have and the fact that our supply chain really do support our business. So I think if anything, it's made people in our business realize just how important our supply chain are, and actually we're nothing without them. And then in terms of what we're going to do in 2021, firstly, we're going to carry on not traveling about. We've already changed our policies to ensure that people don't go back to what they were doing. You know, if there's a vaccine, we don't want everyone rushing back into the office. So we've already now put in allowances for people working at home. People are now going to get paid £750 per year to make sure that we work at home and are paid for electricity and stuff. They've also said that we can't go into the office more than a couple of days a week, depending on your position. We've learned that urgency is really important. Change in our business is too slow. And now we really start to tackle the sustainability issues that have been around for a long time. We realise that this stuff that we're planning to do has got to happen quicker. We're just too slow in change. So we have a sense of urgency. Final few things is simplicity. We need to keep it easy. We need to be easy to do business with for our supply chain. There's been a lot of talk about contracts. Next year, we're going to plan to put standard contracts in with our supply chain partners that almost last them a year. There will be tweaks per project, but let's be a business that's easy to work with and stop putting barriers in the way. And then collaboration, as it always comes up, is going to be key to all of this, because collaboration is what helps us all get to the right answer. So for us, it's about simplicity, collaboration, and being easy to do business with. And that's really the lessons that we've learned.
Steve, can I just talk one point you made there about the contractors wanting to be better? I think most people want to be better. It's about creating the headroom within their businesses to actually invest. Do you think, and this may be an unfair question, but do you think when you look across at your peers, the other major contractors, they see the benefit of early engagement and the partnership approach that we're starting to see through Wilmot Dixon?
Again, I think it's a mixed bag. I don't think we're special in that. I think there's a lot of companies I talk to, such as Morgan Cinder and what have you, and they're all on the same page. But the thing is, in our industry, is there's a difference between saying it and actually doing it, isn't there? And that's the difficulty. We do it as well. We talk a great game, but do we actually deliver on the things that we do? So I think we all talk about collaboration, but it can be more about cooperation in our industry than collaboration. So I do see it out in the industry. In terms of what I was saying about companies wanting to be better, you're more than likely going to be with a group of people, and especially if you're part of the FIS, that believe in that. So you probably see companies that do want to improve, but I also see companies that when we are asking them to do it, they have no desire to change. So I don't think we should think that companies that are in the FIS, that is not commonplace, unfortunately, in our industry. Still, everyone will say they want to get better, but do they actually do the things that actually back that up? And that's really what I mean.
So just to paraphrase that, Steve, we can say Steve Watson and Wilmot Dixon said the FIS membership is exceptional. That's what happens to those. Can I push the same questions across to our manufacturer, because we've got sort of the concept of extended producer responsibility. We talked a little bit about offsite. Can we look at how the sort of COVID sort of culture's changed your business and how you see that moving forward, and what you're going to do differently within the supply chain in 2021? So sorry, I was going to go first to Sean, then to Lydia, and then to Jonathan. Well, I think, Sean, you're on mute. There we go.
Yes, sorry about that. Yeah, no, I think everybody's kind of on the same hymn sheet. Whether we all come together in the same way is a different story, but yeah, definitely offsite is the way forward. We're at the moment in opening an M&E offsite fabrication unit, because with hot works permits and safeties and things like that, it's just the way it has to go. Regarding next year, I think the pandemic is also going to fall into it, but with Brexit, it's definitely going to be a difficult year, but like we're very positive going into it. We've seen already the supply chain is starting to put in the big increases again for next year, which is painful for everybody. As a distributor, we don't want to see price increases coming when you've maybe 500 live customers there. There's a lot of work has to go into doing that, and you don't like sending out the letters, but you're only passing it down the chain. Would make you think at times, how does the subcontractor sustain a job that they've agreed a price on maybe 18 months beforehand, to take an increase of 10% of metal or 10% of Unistrut? Like it's quite a large margin. So we have to do what we can. We just hope that the subcontractors are in good enough positions to sustain it, and everybody can work on together. Definitely, I think we've learned a lot this year. The traveling one was quite interesting, as I haven't been in the UK now in 7 months, and back over next week. But you know, it's worked. Everything's working fine. A lot of our sales guys aren't getting out to sites as much as possible, but the site don't really want to see guys as much either, unless we have to go on for on-site testing, etc. So it's definitely, we've learned a lot through it. But I still next year would like to see us get back to more normality of where we were at before.
Thank you, Sean. Can I come across to Lydia, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, sort of going back on the idea, are we evolving as well? What are we doing? And I agree with what those have said already, that you know, I think we're forever evolving in this industry, and we've always been on a journey of change. We've actually realised this year some of the things that we've seen in the last 20 years, such as you know, shortages on materials and changes in building regulations. The modern methods of construction, like we talk about off-site, that has been on the rise for quite a number of years. It's just that it's been brought to the fore even more so this year. We're introducing induction of likes of BIM over the years as well, and manufacturers bringing out new technology and so on. So I think there's been a lot of stuff that's been on the go for a number of years, and we've actually had stimulation packages from the government prior to this before as well. The big difference this year is that we've been forced to do it, and we're all doing it at the same time as well. So that's something we're just not used to at all. And COVID is obviously absolutely brand new. And really for us, yes, we've had lots of challenges throughout the year. But you know, I sort of agree with what's been said before, but what Steve said about us being actually stronger as a business. Throughout the first lockdown, we managed to actually stay open. And that was really testament to the relationships that we've got, not only with our suppliers and working closely with them, understanding that full supply of products coming through and keeping people up to date with what was going on, but also working closely with the contractors as well and finding out if sites were closed or if they were going to be postponed, or when the new site operating procedures were introduced as well, what impact that had on the likes of deliveries, and how we had to be open to the change, and we had to be flexible, and we had to adapt. And you know, I think actually we should all pat ourselves on the back as an industry, because I do think we're doing pretty well. There has been some really dark times, but there's been some good times to take from this year as well. So you know, the technology as well that we've mentioned about you know, what we're doing right now, that we're actually having a virtual conference. You know, technology is certainly something that we've embraced this year that perhaps we hadn't done prior to COVID pushing us into the lockdown. But yeah, we do question whether or not meetings need to be taken face to face. Can they be done over the likes of Teams or Zoom or so on? And you know, let's focus on relationships to build and grow our businesses together going forward.
Do you see more move to online procurement, Lydia, sort of more digital procurement, or is the branch network still going to be as important to you guys?
Yeah, it's a funny one. I thought there'd be a much bigger drive towards online, but people still like to talk to people. There's still that element of the specialisms and actually understanding what products are available and what they need. And I think actually understanding logistics, getting to site. So whilst you could order something online and push it all through online, and we do get that for regular custom, but more often than not, people like to talk about their project. So there's maybe less people physically coming to a branch, and I think, you know, everybody putting in either their call and collect or click and collect with other distributors in the market. That's working well for trade counters certainly, but I've not seen a massive move to online procurement as yet, but I'm sure it will be to come at some point.
Thanks, Lydia. And across to you, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'd agree with a lot of points that's already been put, but in that I think the industry is evolving and continues to evolve and always has evolved. We talk about change as if it's something new, but as an industry, we constantly change. I think the difference now is the speed of change. I think that evolution is going to become more rapid, and some of the new technologies that we're starting to see evolve now will happen a lot quicker in our industry. Going back to what Noble Francis said earlier about his Kodak camera, the first camera, digital camera, but we're seeing that kind of level of technology emerge with printed buildings and robotization and things. But the speed from going from the equivalent of the first Kodak camera to where we are now in digital cameras, the equivalent of that in our industry will happen a lot quicker. It won't take 20 years, 30 years. It will happen very fast because technology is fast. So as an industry, we will have to embrace that and work with it. I think this last year has kind of taught us about that, in that how fast we move and how agile we realized we could be as an organization, as an industry, as businesses, when we really needed to change and when we wanted to change. We responded to that very quickly and became very agile and adept at adapting what we did. I think some of the collaboration tools that came through have really shown us new ways of working, limited travel, etc. But also we started to rub up against some of the edges of those, of how effective we can be, and that desire with people. Lydia just talked about it. People want to talk, people do want to meet. We're exploring the boundaries of how much online collaboration can work and how much we still need that interaction as a face-to-face thing as well. We're kind of learning our way of how to use these tools has been great. I think the other thing that I touched upon as well that came out of this year was learning how to look after our people in organizations. We've gone through a hell of a change. We're now working very differently. We're having to work out what does that mean to the people that we have in organizations, how we get the best out of them now, and how we work with them, how we look after their health and well-being, how we adapt to more flexible working patterns, how that works. And I think it's come across to me as being more customized in the way that you do it, feeling more almost one-on-one and working how it best works for both people in that respect. In going forward, I really like the aspect of value. I think as an industry, as an interiors industry, we're often undervalued in what we bring to any project. And I like the opportunity that new tools that Anne was talking about this morning, how we express the value we bring on a project and how we get better recognition for the value that we bring on a project, and what we can do to alter that value is something that I think as an organisation we'll be working with going forward as well. And just looking at how we develop that and demonstrate that to be it the customers or onto the end clients of the building as well. I think that's a really exciting opportunity for us all to work towards.
Jonathan, just to come back on one point there in terms of the digital, obviously this kind of sort of pre-planned, it was pre-planned, I promise, event is one element of how we've incorporated digital technology into our work. Are you seeing more in terms of site inspection and immediate support for contractors on site through digital yet, or is that something still to come?
No, we are seeing more of that. The way that customers are interacting with us is more digital. The things like the online chat on website is just exponentially growing. So people will talk to you through the website rather than phone you up now or email you, because I think it creates that combination of it's a written inquiry and you can talk to people, but it's not an email that you kind of see going onto a pile and not being answered for days. We've seen that inside in people utilising technology to do live streaming videos and things like that to cut down on travel and cut down the number of people going to site. It's happening, but that's balanced with still a strong desire for face-to-face elements of when you go onto site. People want to see people and talk to people as well. So I don't think it's going to completely go that way. I think we're going to find a balance somewhere in between the two. But we are seeing that utilisation of technology come in.
So in a similar way to we've had the evolution of the office, it would be a more blended approach that
I think so, yeah.
enables us to use the best of what we have. And like you say, it's difficult for people to evolve so rapidly. Which moves me on to Andrew and Anne, because obviously you see our sector from a unique angle. So you see us in a different way to potentially us. I mean, you see, when you look to the specialist contractors, the manufacturers, do you feel you get the support you need as consultants? And in terms of upstream, where do you see change? You both had really strong messages that I think of hope for us today in terms of what we cherish, in terms of value, what we deliver in terms of value, starting to be recognised more. So who's going to drive this change from a client perspective, in your opinion? So I'll come to Anne first, sorry.
So it's funny because listening to everybody, I guess you've reinforced things that I've heard elsewhere. And I don't know as it's particularly who, as more the sort of type of organisational client that's going to drive the change, because the big conclusion that I've drawn from the way that all companies have responded to coronavirus is that there are broadly two responses, and I think others have said this. There's the response of, crikey, this is a bit of a challenge, we better, you know, sort of dust ourselves off and sort it out and make sure that we can actually come out of this in a better way. And there's been the sort of second type of company that are more, oh, well, it will soon be over and we can go back to whatever we were before. And I think that's true at every single sort of area of the construction industry. So whether you're a, you know, a specialist fit out contractor or whether you're a major client, there will be some that are in the former and some that are in the latter sort of category. And so my sort of observation really is, and all, you know, what I would say to your members is you definitely need to build on the lessons that you've learned during coronavirus, and don't assume that we'll go back to the old way of working, because the forward-looking clients will be looking for forward-looking supply chains. And in fact, you're already seeing that. You're seeing, particularly with big frameworks, where clients can have a much more sort of selective choice, if you like, as to who they use. They are obviously now choosing the suppliers that think like they do, and the suppliers that don't think like they do are just not getting the work. And, you know, I think Steve sort of made the point about the value of his supply chain, but you're seeing that at client level as well. And you know, some of the forward-looking clients are the really big ones. I mean, really, people like Highways Agency or you know, Network Rail in the infrastructure side, but people like the Department for Education, who would still, you know, use fit-out contractors, etc. So on the government side, governments expect to play a massive role in changing the behaviours in the industry. On the private sector side, again, we're seeing even sort of some of the people like some of the big office developers. I mean, they've got to think completely differently because less people want their product. So they've actually got to produce the highest possible quality product in order to make it marketable. And so again, they will be looking for supply chains that think like they do. I think we're going to see a real sort of tiering of the whole of construction. And I know which tier I want to be in, which is the top tier, not the bottom tier.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. And I come across you, Andy. One of the areas I'll pick out with you, Andy, particularly is there's been a lot of talk of sustainability, and often I think when you get to the whip end of the supply chain, sustainability is kind of a tick box exercise at the end rather than a planned event for contractors. I mean, I saw that Perkins and Will recently put a fairly hard-hitting report on the fit-out sector that says that the built environment is responsible for 40% of UK's carbon footprint, and fit-out is responsible for 40% of that. And 300 tons of fit-out going to landfill every day. And they're sort of concerning figures, aren't they? How do you think we as a supply chain should be reacting to that? Is there more we could be doing there? Still relying on the clients to be pushing this, Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, there's always more that everyone can be doing, and I think, as I mentioned in the talk earlier, I think change is accelerated, and we've probably just advanced about 5 years, and that's a good thing in some respects, because we were sloppy, we were complacent. This is as an industry, not just as a company, but we also haven't been doing everything wrong. We've been pushing forward in the right ways. Business is all about relationships, and I think that's one of the key things that's kept us going through this pandemic. The relationships that we've formed with our clients, with our supply chains, with our employees, that's kept us going. And I think we have been traveling around madly, and whilst we look at the carbon impact of that and think that's we've been traveling around too much, actually you think, well, where would we have the quality of relationships that we have got if we hadn't have traveled around quite so much? And I think there's probably a balance in there. And so sustainability is key, but sustainability is two things. It's not just reducing carbon impact. It's about doing great things now as well. And I think we have to balance giving great advice, providing a great product, with not compromising the future. So, I mean, we set out 2020 being the year of net zero, and that was our mantra from January this year. Things took a bit of a weird turn in March, where the wheels fell off. But actually, we've achieved net zero carbon. We did that in September of this year, and we were very proud to have done that. The cynics may say, well, it was easier to do because you were stopping business travel. Yeah, that has an impact, but I think we have a responsibility to go zero carbon in everything that we do. And as a business, we want to positively influence the rest of the industry. So we want to work with clients and contractors and suppliers who share the same vision as us. So we will want to work with clients who want to drive to net zero in their operations, in their construction. We'll want to work with contractors who share the same sustainability goals as us. We'll want to work with products that have green credentials, that haven't been trawled around the world and been impregnated with all sorts of nasty chemicals to get to site just for the sake of looking nice. It's got to be right the way through the industry. So sustainability is the cornerstone of everything that we do, because we don't have another option. We have a moral responsibility to be sustainable in our approach. But everything comes down to relationships and communication. We have to be communicating together. We have to be communicating responsibly together. And that's the only way that we're going to go forward. And the big thing that everyone's talked about today is flexibility and adaptation. We're not going back to normal. Well, we are, but it's not the same normal that we had before. We will forge whatever that normal becomes. But also, let's not kid ourselves that when the vaccine comes, then everything's going to be happy. There will be more pandemics, there will be more disruptions to the industry, and we've just got to be flexible to adapt to that. You snooze, you lose.
I guess an element that's upholding our values, isn't it? And we've talked about this throughout today, really. I mean, if with FIS we talk about it's about quality. I mean, you've been involved in our acoustic verification scheme. The pressure is going to be on all parts of the supply chain to ensure we can't be sustainable unless we're putting the right products in the right way. And we can't be safe unless we're putting the right products in the right way. And this back to the product, process, people approach. We've got to be more structured about how we deliver, more consistent about how we deliver, which plays to that partnership approach. There's still some of the ground truths, though, that still concern me. So we talked a bit about contracts, and I think probably of the presentation, so that was the least positive story. We're not seeing the change coming. And again, the contractor is a slave to the contract. So, and I think another area that there's questions now coming in from the floor on this, but the design liability and design development is a real concern through the supply chain at the moment. So is it clear where risk, and I'm going to ask this one, that's probably to Anne and Andy first, and then come across maybe to Steve and then Jim, but just at the moment, design and build contract range from full design to design development, but as specialist contractors, would never ask to specify fire performance. How do we define where, I suppose, to cut that question short here, how do we define responsibility? Where does it start and stop? The manufacturer's role, the contractor's role, and is this going to be an area of profound change over the next 12 months? Can I come to you with that one, then? I know this is an area for the TLC.
I mean, I think it is going to be an area for profound change, because I actually think that professional indemnity insurance, and that's whether you're a consultant, a D&B contractor, or indeed a specialist contractor who has a design element, is going to actually change the industry. And what I mean by that is that if anybody now offers any service whatsoever that is vaguely connected with anything to do with fire, so whether that's fireproofing or cladding or whatever, then the demands that the PI insurers are going to put on your business means that you are going to have to be incredibly aware of what your liability is, whose liability you might be taking, who carries the top liability, and what the consequences of this are. And this isn't even contractual. I mean, it is contractual, but it's more than contractual. It's because if you can't get insurance, you just can't work in our industry, let's face it. And so strangely, I think that change is going to come from maybe a bit left field that we hadn't sort of but I'm not sure I can tell you what that change is going to be, because at the moment, and I can only talk from a consultant's point of view, our PI premiums have pretty much doubled in the last sort of 12 months or so, and we don't even do that much high-rise work. I know for architects who specialise in high-rise buildings, for example, I mean, some of them are finding it's almost impossible to get insurance at the moment. And so I think that in order to unpick this, we're all going to have to be crystal clear as to where our liabilities start and end. And I actually think that it even might lead to more things like whole project insurance and that sort of thing, because occasionally it's not possible to unpick where the liability begins and ends, because it's a pass-through thing. You develop somebody else's work. So, I mean, it's of critical importance. And you're right, BEIS, the Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, have actually got a group of people working on this at the moment, because they see this as one of the biggest single issues that's going to face our industry after coronavirus and after Brexit. It's just that because of those two big things, people maybe aren't talking about it as much as they should be.
Steve, can I come to you, because I know this is a big area for major contractors as well, obviously, and and I think the challenge for specialist contractors at times is that you're a little bit siloed. Does this play more to the sort of the partnership approach, teams working regularly together so that the joinery contractor and the dry lining contractor understand the interfaces more effectively?
Yeah, I mean, I'd probably just repeat what you just said. I mean, I agree with what Anne said. I think that it's probably going to be taken out of our hands in some way, but from our point of view, it's getting the right people together and actually making sure that nothing's left with, I suppose, a question mark or a grey area. I don't know actually how you sort it out across the board, because I still think a lot of that is the behaviour of, for example, it's the behaviour of Willmott Dixon and the desire to make sure that we're working with companies so they don't feel like they don't know the part that they play or what they're responsible for. We certainly have tried to put things in place to help, such as, we've got the Yellow Book, which is our standard design. And in that, it does ensure that we speak to certain manufacturers and they are actually telling us what the fixings should be. I'm just relating back to the question that's asked, that there is an onus on those on manufacturers when they work with Willmott Dixon to dictate what should be used, and they're responsible for that. And then it's obviously making sure that we're fair with the partners and the consultants that we use and the contractors. But at the start, when we're all in one room and we have the early engagement, we know what part we will play. But I don't know if there's one thing that I can say that will completely sort that issue out, to be fair, because I hear this quite a lot, that again, for contractors, it's inconsistent. You'll go to one contractor, it's a different set of rules, then you'll go to someone else, they leave it deliberately vague. But I think you need to try and push back and don't take on anything that is that you're uncomfortable with, or it's going to land water.
Can I come to Jim and Helen with that question in terms of you guys are there managing that risk on a daily basis? I mean, to Jim first, how are you finding, is it getting better or worse? I think you're on mute, Jim.
You're on mute, Jim.
You want to go, Helen, and then Jim can jump in?
Yeah. This is a nightmare for us at the moment. So our PI policy trebled in price this year, and I was hit with 2 endorsements, one of which gave me a real problem because we were halfway through a contract. So we had an endorsement for any type of fire safety products, and our broker at the time translated that as even covering firewalls, 1 hour walls or ceilings. And when we looked into it in more detail, I wasn't convinced that was the case. It was also a blanket cladding endorsement, which once again, I don't think it was actually combustibility of cladding, not a blanket cladding. And like Anne said, actually, at one point, this used to apply to buildings either 11 metres or 18, higher than 11 or 18 metres. But now they seem to have put these blanket endorsements on. So I've literally spent months now stressing about this, and it's very difficult to work out precisely where your risks lie and trying to cover them, actually. And I think this is going to be a focus for the FIS next year, because I think this is going to become more of a problem for all contractors.
Julia,
I'm hoping, and the brokers are saying that they're hoping the market will calm down. So if we give it 12 months and you go back to renewing your policy next year, there might not be these blanket endorsements. So let's just keep our fingers crossed. But I think you're going to have a lot of members, Ian, or we're going to have a lot of members coming to us with these issues.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where things like our ceiling fixings guide come in, the penetrations guide, to try and give more prescriptive advice, defining reasonable. I'm going to come to Jim, and I'm going to get a manufacturer's point of view from Jonathan and Sean. That's okay, Jim?
Well, design for us is we have no choice on a number of contracts that take on the design responsibility because of the size of the jobs we do. Like Helen said, our insurers for our PI has gone up enormously. But I think there's two parts of the design. The design is a risk I don't think many specialist contractors understand. That's cost me a moment.
Is that for me, Jim?
There's two parts of the design is covering yourselves for insurance and understanding what that insurance cover is. Then it's the design and knowing the design risk you're taking on with a contract and how each main contractor interprets it differently. So I can give you examples where with main contractors that have good practice, they will work with the manufacturers and the architects, and will have, for example, on a British Gypsum dry lining project, they will have a project pack, and they would have gone down the line all the way to the manufacturer to ensure the specifications right, the project pack's right, you know what you're pricing, and it's all back to back. As long as we're compliant in the build, it all works. Okay, we have other main contractors that will say, there's a specification, the design's your responsibility, where you have to take on that risk and work with the manufacturers to get that design in a place. And then you'll have main contractors will say, well, if something changes on the job, that design risk is yours, and therefore any change in that design whilst you're on site becomes your risk. And they'll call that design development or design creep. And on major projects, that could come to an enormous amount of cost. So I think design is a huge subject that the FIS will have to get behind, because some specialist contractors will not realise the risk they're actually taking on.
No, if I had one word of advice, it would be absolutely read those endorsements, totally understand what that endorsement is telling you, and then go back and negotiate with your broker or the underwriter as to what it absolutely means, so that you absolutely know what your risk is.
I come to Jonathan and Sean to see how the manufacturers are reacting to this. So Sean, can I come to you first and then to Jonathan?
Yeah, I've actually found a big change in this in the last year, especially. We would get maybe a bill of quantities sent in from a subcontractor, that a job that they're tendering, a job that they've won. And so you might have all British Gypsum screws, you might have a certain brand of access panels, but it always seemed to come to just putty pads, or it came to Firebat. You know, there was no real brands in it. So what we're trying to do now, and what we're the unfortunate thing is that there is difference in prices. So I think the main thing is with your putty pads, your fire blankets, your Firebats, your mastics, is to keep it all in the one brand. And yes, I know, you know, a Firetherm or a FSI mastic might be dearer than another, but the putty pad could be cheaper. But I think everyone needs to look at the bigger picture of it, that keep it all the same under the one umbrella, whatever brand you go with. And even if it's a brand, you know, I'm not trying to get a sale out of it, but if it's a brand that we don't even sell, I would just really recommend keep it all the same. That's what we're really pushing out there at the moment. You win some, you lose some on it.
So Jonathan, come to you, and then we'll have the final question, because we're
I think it comes back to the common theme that we have in a lot of this is that engagement early on. We get involved in designing ceilings and working with the likes of lighting manufacturers, and if we're engaged early on, some of the questions over interfaces between different suppliers and different technologies can be overcome in collaboration with whoever is working with the design. But it's about having that time, that space to work with each other, what meets the requirements and overcome some of the questions about how you interact with two elements. So it goes back to that same question of getting involved early and being open and collaborative.
So I'm going to make my final question very selfish, because this is about our community. Today is about our community. So I'm going to ask each person. I'm going to go from Helen first, then to Lydia. But where do you think FIS? How do you think FIS needs to react, and where should we bring our influence to bear to help deliver positive change for our supply chain?
Well, the building safety bill is obviously going to be a hot topic, especially in the first quarter. So obviously the technical space, because I think everybody needs to understand the implications of the bill and what effect it's going to have on their business. Also training and competence. Lots of people have talked about the competence issue, and that all comes back to training. And insurance. We've just covered insurance, and that all comes under the building safety bill, really. Reverse charge VAT. That is. I think we've all forgotten about that. We were all talking about it 12 months ago, and we all realised what a massive impact on our cash flow this was going to have, and it's got lost. It's got lost in the terrible problems this year, but potentially that's the 1st of March. Yeah, and I think a lot of people will have forgotten that.
We have a cash flow case on our website, Helen, just to remind people it's there. But we are writing to the Chancellor this week again to emphasise it's daft to do it.
Yeah.
We haven't
delay again.
Well, I won't tell you what odds I've got on change, but we haven't given up. Can I come to the same question to Lydia, please?
Yeah, sure. I guess in general, it's really about the FIS continue to work with the likes of the CLC and these sort of bodies, that when these new initiatives and the new stimulants come into the marketplace, that they are actually considering how it will work in practice. So it's given that influence at that level, but then it's then trying to then decipher it and disseminate it for us as members. So for the FIS membership, for us all to fully understand actually what it actually means and how we can take that forward into our day-to-day practices. One of the key things from a marketing point of view from me is that in the back of the Hackett report, we had the Marketing Integrity Group formed from the CPA, and I think that's going to be of vital importance going forward, particularly with all that's going on at the moment in the industry. Is thinking about how we describe things, how we talk about products. We talk about ownership and risk of things, but actually how do we decipher that and the responsibilities of the manufacturers through to distribution to the contractors of getting that product information across in a clear and concise way.
Thank you, Lydia. Can I come to Steve and then Anne, please? Steve?
Hi, sorry. Well, just to, I suppose, take it on a slightly different angle, so I agree all those things are important, but for us at Willmott Dixon, the whole sustainability issue for us is got to be top of the agenda for all of our supply chain really now, if we're going to achieve what our aspirations. As I said before, we can't do it without the supply chain. So I suppose that support around what that means to the companies that would, are part of the FIS membership, what part they play, how we can contribute, I suppose, to the journey. That obviously all the things that we've already discussed, quality, workmanship, they're all important, but that the future doesn't seem that far away. And I just worry the fact that if there's not a big drive and we don't start having these conversations now, it's going to be, time's going to get away from us to do anything about it. So for us next year, and probably forevermore, all you're going to be hearing is sustainability, climate change, and we will be banging that drum for a long time to come. So that's really where I'd like support for supply chain.
Thank you. Cheers, Steve. Can I come to you, Anne?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the really valuable sort of service, if you like, you could provide for your members is the sort of continuous support to them through living through a period of change, because actually this period of change is now never ending. I mean, we've not just had to change because of coronavirus, we've got to change because of, you know, net zero, we've got to change because the law changes, we've got to, and we are just going to see change upon change upon change, you know, digital agendas, goodness knows what. I mean, and the other two are the real obvious ones, is just continuous support in quality and competence. I mean, sorry, not incompetence, quality and competence.
There's lots of that, yeah.
Because I really do think we're going to see a separation in the industry, and I think that those those competent businesses that are resilient, that can deal with change and are delivering a quality product, are the ones that are going to survive, and the ones that are stuck in the mud and think that any old thing will do because nobody will ever check it anyway are the ones that nobody will want to touch with a barge pole. And so I think you have such a role to play in making sure that your members are lifted up, not pushed down.
Thank you, Anne. Can I come to Sean, please?
Yeah, I think you should really try and keep promoting about training and testing, especially, you know, like the difference at 5mm embedment mixing something, or the difference now with thick insulation going in. It's not the same embedments as was with 100mm insulation and things like that, where people might think, oh, there's no difference. There's a reason there's new products coming to the market all the time. So I think, especially from the start of a job, you know, give anybody, us or our competitors, give us a call, get out, do all the testing, show training. Even guys that's been in it a long time, there's nothing wrong with refresher courses. And I think that is the main thing. Though, pass some of the responsibility that you have over to the likes of our guys, and that's the way forward. Everybody needs to, you know, training and testing, but do it from the start. Don't leave it too late that you have to pull something down, or you have to go back and second fix things, and make sure it's all done from the start of jobs.
Yeah, cost of rework. Can I come to Andrew next, please?
Yeah, I think insurance is the biggest issue, and I think any support that the FIS can give there would be gratefully received. I mean, we provide all sorts of consulting, including fire consulting, and everything that's coming out of the Grenfell inquiry is great and well intentioned, and it's pushing the point of responsibility and the need for someone to take ownership and to do things properly. The challenge is that more than ever, good fire engineering and good design is needed, but less than ever, there isn't insurance cover for it. So a lot of the things that we're being asked to do as engineers, we cannot physically do now because we're not insured to do it. So the consequence of that is that we haven't got the insurance to do a lot of these things. So it gets pushed down the chain to the contractors and the subcontractors. And ultimately, you end up footing the bill because you have to take the responsibility. So there's a bit of a gap at the moment, and I think we need to refill that insurance gap. If we can refill that, then that will take a lot of the stress off the industry generally. But at the moment, the insurers are pulling out of PI because it's too risky and it doesn't make them enough money. And so it may need to get to the point that we did with flood risk, where there needs to be a governmental step in to underwrite fire insurance. And I think that's probably the only solution.
That's a fair point. I know through the CLC there is work ongoing to have a more structured dialogue now with the insurance industry, so that the two are working less remotely and more and using their risk engineers. Can I come to Jim, please? Oh, you're on mute again, Jim.
That's because my dogs were barking. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's said. For me, the FIS has got some significant challenges in supporting the membership, in interpreting the new legislation that's going to be coming out and what it means to the membership, particularly the contractors, because there will be, I believe there's going to be statutory requirements upon competencies and ensuring things are installed correctly. and mentioned ownership, and do they really understand what that means to them as a business? So I think the FIS have got a lot of work in doing that. And we spoke about involvement, and I think the FIS needs to be a leader in innovation. And whether we have a number of working groups, but I don't believe we have a working group on innovation. How do we help our memberships? How do we evolve? How do we, hit the sustainability requirements, insurance, so innovation is something that we're going to need, our members are going to need help on, because we have different size contractors in our membership. We have companies that are small businesses that are, less than £2-3 million, and we have companies that are, in excess of £40 million turnover, and they all have different competencies and different requirements. But it's our job to make sure that we help as many members as we can to be in the top tier, as Anne said, and not in the bottom tier.
So from Jim, it's about innovation, and we're going to give the final word to Jonathan.
For me, FIS is about the unique position, almost unique position it has in bringing groups like this together from right across the supply chain, from client side right through to manufacturers, and how it utilises that to really out there within groups like this is the answer to almost anything. And it's how we bring these groups together to get to those answers, and then take that out to the membership and use its position as a centre point across our entire industry to really get the benefit from that, get the collective knowledge, understanding and expertise to really answer some of these questions that we've been talking about today, and then democratise that by taking it across our entire membership from biggest to kind of some of the smaller organisations, and make it available and accessible to everybody.
Just acting for the community. So again, that's what it's from Jonathan, it's about community. So listen, I'd like to thank our panelists. We've gone over time. I can only apologise for that. Anybody who knows me knows I'm a right windbag, so it was inevitable. But I need to draw things to a close. And whilst we've heard some difficult ground truths and hurdles that we need to overcome, change is rooted in culture, and culture can change. And change, I think, now is inevitable. There's so many things driving this tipping point now. And I think in terms of our reaction to that, I mean, Helen Tapper, our president, wrote in an article recently, when we communicate, we improve, when we collaborate, we transform. And I think that's a very powerful quote that we take forward from this event. It's about collaboration, it's about innovation, it's about community, and ultimately FIS, it's about you. So there's a couple of questions have come in that we haven't been able to answer in the flow of this debate, but a couple around immigration particularly. Yes, we are concerned, and I will be publishing later on today some of the figures from our survey. Other things coming out today is and it should be on the website by the end of play today, is our first competency matrix that we've developed for the dry lining sector, which we're interpreting what's happening within the building safety bill and the competency working groups in order to drive a more prescriptive and more clearly understood standard for competency within our sector, linked back to the qualifications and training that's available. So that should be available today. Also a risk management toolkit. It only remains for me to thank our panel, our speakers, our sponsors, namely our headline sponsors, Sean and ETAG, Forza Doors, SIG and Muffle, along with our own acoustic verification scheme, have sponsored the event, and finally CCF, who've also been an event sponsor. I'd also like to say a special thanks to the FIS team today, because this is the first complex online event we've ran. I can only apologise for a few of the ruffles, and particularly me on mute for best part of a couple of minutes. We're doing our best, guys, and I just hope that whilst we do have more events like this next year, that we'll be able to do it with a nice little hotel croissant and a cup of coffee in our hands, and able to spend a little bit of time actually face to face as a community. But thank you, everybody. Stay safe, stay sane, and stay smiling. Take care.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.